Continuing our reading in Poppy and Ereth by Avi, today is Chapter 4, Spruce and Poppy. Spruce was the son of Ragweed Jr. and Laurel. Not only had he been the last of his litter to be born that spring, he was small and skinny. His siblings called him the runt of the family, though never when their parents were around. Spruce generally enjoyed being with his brothers and sisters, but with food scarce because of the dry summer, he often found himself pushed aside or at the end of the line for good seeds. It may have happened less than he thought, but it was all too frequent for him. The result, though he was hardly more than 3 months old, he took to going off by himself and wandering about in search of something to eat. One morning during the middle of summer, despite the intense heat, Spruce set out alone. After some hours of searching, he found a dry pine seed. He was just about to eat it when he saw his grandmother Poppy coming along the path. Spruce's parents had told their children not to bother Grandma Poppy because she was so sad about Rye's death and wanted to be left alone. It had happened before Spruce was born, so although he had heard of Poppy's many adventures, he hardly knew her. Mostly he thought of her as very old, and Spruce was uncertain how he felt about old mice. "Good morning, Grandma," he whispered as he stepped aside to let Poppy pass while eyeing her with curiosity. Poppy went silently by, only to halt a few steps beyond, turn, and look back at the young mouse. "Oh my," she said, "I have so many grandchildren, I can hardly count them, and I don't know them all by name, but I believe you are Spruce? One of Junior and Laurel's sons, am I right?" "Yes, thank you," said Spruce, amazed that Grandma Poppy knew him at all. Poppy gazed intently at the young mouse. "You resemble your father," she announced. "I do?" asked Spruce, who had never thought he looked like anyone except himself. "And your father," continued Poppy, "looked like his father. That means you are rather like your grandfather Rye. But the more I consider it, the more I think you most look like your great uncle Ragweed." "Is that bad?" asked Spruce. "Actually," said Poppy with all but silent sigh, "I think it's nice. Now tell me, Spruce, what are you doing out here alone on such a hot day?" Spruce thought for a moment and then said, "I'm hunting foxes." "Are you really?" Poppy cried. "I saw a huge one go by a little while ago," said Spruce. "But guess what? I chased him away." "What a good story. What else have you been doing?" "Looking for seeds." "Find any?" Spruce held up the seed he had found. "Would you like a bite?" Poppy actually smiled, something she had not done for a long while. Spruce's offer somehow made her feel lighter. "Spruce," she said, "what would you say to my helping you look for more seeds?" Spruce was surprised. As far as he knew, Poppy had never spent any time with his brothers or sisters. "Do you really want to?" he asked. Poppy nodded. "And if we see another fox," she added solemnly, "I'll help you chase him away. I think that would be really fun." "I'd like that," said Spruce, delighted that Poppy enjoyed his joke. All that afternoon, Poppy and Spruce searched about the forest. They talked very little and mostly about Spruce, but they did manage to avoid all foxes, even as they collected some seeds. Then Poppy led Spruce to a rock under which they could sit in the cool shade. "Spruce," said Poppy as they ate, "what do you like to do most of all?" "I don't know," the young mouse mused. "Probably doing something nobody else does. Just me, all alone." Poppy looked all around at him. Then to Spruce, she seemed very serious. "Is that bad?" he asked. "Oh, no," cried Poppy. "You know, your great uncle Ragweed, the one you look like, he used to say, 'A mouse has to do what a mouse has to do.'" A mouse has to do what a mouse has to do, Spruce repeated. I like that. And he gazed at Poppy and struggled to understand what it was like to be so old. Next moment he blurted out, Then what is it you have to do? Me? Said Poppy, taken aback by the question. Well, what do you mean? It's what you said about a mouse doing, only I guess you're too old to do anything. Oh dear, do I look that old? Your whiskers droop. I suppose they do, said Poppy, not sure if she should laugh or cry. Instead she sighed, half longingly, half resigned. Well, I have to admit, I'm not sure what I'll do. That's okay, said Spruce. You're so old you don't have to do anything. Only, I still think you should do something. Why? Spruce thought for a moment. Because I like you. Well, thank you. Later, as they parted, Spruce said, Goodbye, Poppy. Grandma Poppy. And Mom and Dad told us, well, not to bother you. Did they give you a reason? Because you were so sad. Ah, said Poppy. I suppose I am. But can I still visit you? Poppy smiled. Any time you want. My snag is nice and cool and empty. Okay, said Spruce, and off he went. As Poppy watched him go, she thought, Now there's a charming young mouse, and he really does look like Ragweed. It made her think of Ragweed's words again, the words she had quoted to the young mouse. A mouse has to do what a mouse has to do. That in turn made her ponder the question Spruce had asked. Then what is it you have to do? All the way back to the stag, the question kept rolling about Poppy's head. Then as she stepped into her home, she considered what Spruce had also said. You're so old you don't have to do anything. It's true, thought Poppy. These days all I'm doing is feeling hot, heavy, and tired. She set about straightening up the snag, but stopped and sat down and thought about Spruce instead. She had not been very much older than the young mouse when she met Ragweed. Closing her eyes, Poppy recalled the first time she saw Ragweed coming through the forest. Not only was his fur golden in color, something she had never seen before, he was singing and, oh yes, wearing a purple beaded earring. Poppy giggled. That earring, Ragweed had been her first love. Except, as she thought about it, it was not so much Ragweed she loved as his great love of life, his energy. Poppy dug deeper into her memories. What was it like in those days when she had begun to spend time with Ragweed? Certainly her life had begun to change. She had started asking questions. She had grown a little bolder. Then Ragweed died tragically, but his death led to her meeting Ereth and her great duel with Mr. Okax the owl. That in turn brought her to Rye, with whom she fell in love. Rye had cared so much about life, and about Poppy too, as well as about poetry and their family, all in the sweetest of ways. No, nothing flamboyant about Rye, just a steady, kind, and loving mouse. Oh, how she missed him. How different my life used to be, thought Poppy. So many changes. Now I'm utterly predictable. Nothing varies. She shrugged. It certainly would be nice if days were cooler and something different happened. Poppy went back to thinking about Ragweed's earring. It's almost, she thought, as if that tiny twist of metal with its small purple bead was the spark that altered my life. Whatever did become of that earring? Poppy mused. Next moment she remembered she had hung it on a hazelnut tree atop Bannock Hill, so she would always remember Ragweed. She gasped. But life became so busy. I did forget about that earring. All at once, Poppy felt an overwhelming desire to see if the earring was where she had put it. Never mind the heat, never mind the lateness of the day. She must see if it was still there. In her mind, she again heard Spruce say, "You're so old, you don't have to do anything." "No," Poppy cried right out loud. "I need to see if that earring is still there." The next moment, she burst out of her snag and began to scurry along the path that would lead her through the forest, across Glitter Creek, and up to Bannock Hill. As Poppy scampered along, she could not help but notice how grim the forest looked, so brittle and dusty that nothing moved without crinkling. While there was still a little greenery, much of the forest seemed rusty and stiff. Poppy came to a halt. "Stop thinking drooping thoughts," she told herself. "Be cheerful." She began to run and soon reached the banks of Glitter Creek. Before her lay the old bridge and beyond Bannock Hill. Too excited to even look at the creek, she dashed over to the other side. "What a comfort it will be if Ragweed's earring is still there," Poppy kept thinking as she raced toward the summit of the hill. "Oh, please, please," she said aloud. "Please be there. I don't want everything to have changed." And that's the end of chapter 4.